According to new reporting from AXIOS, a few days after the 2020 election, then President Trump gave a note to his aide that included stunning directives to withdraw U.S. forces from Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, Germany, and the continent of Africa. We have an excerpt from the latest episode of AXIOS on HBO where they discuss it.
Usually, something as weighty as a presidential memorandum ordering the withdrawal of the United States from its longest war would be vetted thoroughly.
It would go through the National Security Council. It would go through the White House counsel's office. Right. It would go through the Defense Department counsel, DNI.
Yes.
State Department would be aware of it.
None of those people had seen this piece of paper.
Nobody knew.
All right, let's talk now to that reporter you see there on your screen, Jonathan Swan, Axios national political reporter. Jonathan, good to have you with us. So quite an interesting dynamic that was at play there. What did Trump want to do? What drove those decisions? And did Trump have a clear plan, as you guys outlined in that clip we played?
Yeah, so thanks, Eamon. So the story we broke last night on Axios on HBO is really documenting what was the tensest moment between a president and the military in modern history. And I don't think it's an overstatement to say that. This is in the final days of the Trump presidency. As a lame duck president, defeated by Joe Biden 6 days later, Donald Trump gets his former body man, John McEntee, 31-year-old former college football quarterback who he appointed as the head of Presidential Personnel Office. He dispatches John McEntee to talk to a retired Army colonel that he'd brought into the Pentagon, Douglas Macgregor, highly controversial figure. And they hatched this plan completely outside the normal chain of command, the normal processes and policy structures in which decisions of this magnitude are decided. And as you laid out, you know, it's not just Afghanistan. He wanted to withdraw from Germany, which would have fundamentally changed America's position in the world and relationship to the NATO alliance. He wanted to completely get out of Africa, the continent of Africa, get out of Iraq and Syria. Douglas Macgregor, who, you know, is not someone who would normally push back on orders to withdraw. He's been on Fox News many times calling for withdrawal. Even he said, yeah, you know, I'm not sure we can get all of this done by January 20. But the fact is they did turn much of that order into a formal order that went from the president to the Pentagon. It was a written order typed up, signed by the president, and arrived by courier in the inbox of the acting Secretary of Defense, Christopher Miller, on the afternoon of November 11th. It said total withdrawal from Afghanistan by January 15th, total withdrawal from Somalia by December 31st. And this activates this effort at the very top levels of the United States military and national security apparatus to overturn the desires of the president in these final days.
So, Jonathan, big picture here, how did that fit into the broader pattern? Because the president's, you know, his behavior seemed there unsettling, as you mentioned, but how did it fit in a broader picture of what you saw and other reporters documented over 4 years of covering that administration? Well,
the bizarre thing with Donald Trump is he came into office with very unnuanced views about American engagement overseas. It's not like he sort of thought, oh, you know, these wars are okay in certain respects, these engagements. He basically wanted to come in and take American troops out of every theater that we had them in. And what happened, bizarrely, was because he was so focused on appearances and central casting, he places in these key positions generals who look like Trump's sort of ideal of a 1940s unreconstructed military figure, you know, who he thinks shares his values. They actually fundamentally disagree with him in pretty much every respect, but mostly in his worldview. And so what you have throughout his presidency is Trump reluctant to actually sign a formal order and continually being talked out of his instincts by the generals and, you know, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Mark Milley, before that, the Defense Secretary, James Mattis. And so you get to the situation where he loses the election and he's in these final days and he's flailing. He's trying to overturn the election, the Democratic result from Joe Biden. He's trying to block the transition process. And he just throws these Hail Marys to try and get out of all of these engagements. The military top people, including General Milley, made the argument this would be dangerous if they pulled out before January 20. And this was really one of the key arguments that were being made to the president in those final days.
Hey, Jonathan, we're almost out of time, but I know it was an important relationship. Just talk to us briefly about the relationship Trump had with Defense Secretary Mark Esper, who obviously, you know, the relationship reportedly soured after that whole Lafayette Square incident.
Yeah, so after Mark Esper gave this speech on June the 3rd last year, where he came out against the Insurrection Act, using the Insurrection Act to set troops loose on American streets to put down these protests, Trump was furious about that. And Mark Esper privately concluded at that time that President Trump was willing to use the military to affect the election result. This is what Esper himself concluded.
Wow.
And he concluded that there may be no boundaries there. So that relationship broke down irreparably after that.
All right, Jonathan Swan from AXIOS with that incredible reporting. Jonathan, as always, thank you, my friend.
Thanks for having me.